I met a guy online recently who seemed nice and kind. I set up a date with him for Friday, and everything was going well until yesterday. He sent me a message saying he wanted to hang out the next morning, and I agreed. I thought we would just go to a coffee shop, and he would come at the time we agreed on. I went to bed happy, but I woke up to a phone call at 8 a.m. Surprised, I answered it. It was my date. "Hey, are you awake?" he asked. "I just woke up," I replied. "I don't care how you look," he said. "Also, your mom scared me." "My mom?" I asked, confused. "Yeah, she saw me park across from your house. She waved at me and I waved back. She was kinda creepy." "What time did you come over?" I asked. 5:30 a.m., he said. My heart sank. I had no idea someone I was casually meeting for coffee would show up so early and wait for me to wake up. After the call, I checked my messages. There was a message from 5 a.m. with a picture of my house and the words, "Do you live here?" The next message said, "Someone saw me, so I moved," with a picture of my neighbor's house. I was really freaked out and knew my mom and neighbors must have been too. I started panicking and texting my friends, desperate to see if anyone was awake and could help me. I get one reply in the group chat. Afraid of being judged, I lie and say I have the situation under control. I decide to go out and face this guy. When I step outside, I see him standing in my neighbor's yard, probably looking for me in the window. I feel scared, but I try to smile and let him hug me. He leans in for a kiss. It's wet and messy, with too much tongue. I feel frozen and don't know what to do. I tell him that coming at 5 a.m. to wait for me isn't okay. He says he wanted to avoid traffic and not drive while sleepy since he works nights. I try to understand and shake off my bad feelings. I get into his car, and we go on a date. But it doesn't feel normal. He keeps touching me, licking my neck and talking about marriage and having kids right away. I convince him to drop me off far from my house so I can walk back alone. As I walk, I realize he's following me in his car. When I ask him why, he says he wants to make sure I get home safe. I tell him no, even more scared now, and manage to escape. By the time I get home, I'm crying and shaking. I text him, saying we're not a good match and to stay away from me and my family. He replies, calling me the worst. After that, I decide to take a break from online dating. This happened about 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. I had just ended a 3-year relationship that didn't end well, and I didn't want to date anyone in my friend group. I needed a change, so I decided to try online dating on a site called OkCupid. I know it sounds like a bad idea, and I realize that now, but back then I thought it might work. I had low expectations, thinking most people on these sites were fake or desperate, but to my surprise, I went on a few nice dates with no weird vibes. I told my mom about my dates, so she always knew where I was and when I'd be back. I thought I was being smart. Then, I found Dennis's profile. He seemed nice, kind of cute and interesting, so I sent him a message. He had a playful, sarcastic sense of humor that I liked, so I decided to meet him. We met at a coffee shop and had a good conversation. Dennis was 5'9", average build, balding with reddish hair and glasses. He seemed like a nerd, starting off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my usual answer about wanting someone sweet, caring, funny, and smart. I realized later that this was a mistake. Dennis and I went on a few more dates. They weren't very memorable, but I started to really like him. He was sweet, understanding, caring, and took care of himself. He seemed perfect, and I couldn't understand why he was single. We decided to be exclusive. Everything was fine until about 2 months into our relationship when things started to go wrong. For the last month, I had been asking to hang out at his place and meet his roommate, following my parents' advice. But Dennis always had an excuse. His roommate was crazy, it wasn't a good time, they had different schedules, and so on. One night, we planned to go to a club. I got dressed up and waited for him. He didn't answer his phone for hours, and my messages didn't go through. I thought his phone must have died. So I decided to go to his place. I had his address, though I don't remember how I got it, and he lived about 15 minutes away in an apartment complex. It was the middle of February and very cold. I knocked on his door, but got no answer. As I was heading back to my car, guess who showed up? Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you're right, another woman. I later found out she was his long-term girlfriend, Jessica. I quickly walked over to him, and the look on his face was priceless. His expression changed completely when he saw me. He whispered something to the girl, and she went inside. He then came over to me, looking shocked. "I'm surprised to see you here," he said. "Really? We had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home." "I remember. My phone died, so I didn't get your texts, and I lost track of time. We were at a friend's birthday party." "Who's the girl?" I asked. "My roommate." "I thought a guy was your roommate." "He is. She's my other roommate and a good friend." I was skeptical, and alarm bells were going off in my head, just like my parents had warned. But Dennis was very good at talking his way out of situations. He always had reasons for everything he did. He was a great liar, and I was naive and insecure, so I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think too much about it because I was getting what I wanted, and nothing more was said about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept asking Dennis about meeting his family and his guy roommate. He finally gave in and took me to see his mother. It was a very odd experience. We talked about books and some of Dennis's friends, and I made a joke about how Dennis's guy roommate was nuts, using Dennis's words. They both gave me the strangest looks. This would make more sense to me later when I realized that Dennis's stories didn't add up, and there were many holes in them. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he said he worked a lot of overtime. He was never flexible and wouldn't change his mind. If he was late, which started happening often, he would send me screenshots of his work or his work vehicle getting washed. Sometimes he would send screenshots of his bathroom, saying he wanted to freshen up. When I asked for a picture of him in the bathroom mirror, he would refuse. He also took unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex, like 20 minutes or more. Another huge alarm bell. Everything came to a head about a month later. I told Dennis I wanted us to go somewhere with no phone service to spend time together without distractions. He agreed, and we made plans to spend 2 to 3 days in Canada. It was still early in our relationship, 4 months in, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe. She took down Dennis's driver's license, made a copy of it, and noted his license plate. "Thank you, Mom." The trip was uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or if he was actually asleep, but Dennis rolled over to my side, pulled me close, and said, "I love you, Jessica." My blood ran cold. I was so upset. Tears blurred my vision as I got out of the bed. My parents were right all along. He was a liar and a cheat. But did I break it off? No, of course not. I was naive and desperately in love with him. I also didn't want to admit to myself that I had been played or that I was the side girl. So, I acted like nothing was wrong and pretended I hadn't heard what he said that night. The bad feelings stayed with me for weeks. I started having anxiety and panic attacks because of it. Dennis kept lying to me all the time. It got so bad that I became really angry. I let that anger grow for a few days until I decided to do something about it. Realizing you were right all along is bittersweet. On a freezing day in March, after a long day at school, I wanted to end the nagging feeling in my mind once and for all. I decided to go to Dennis's apartment complex to see if he was still lying about living with his girl roommate. I parked my car and got out, shaking. I didn't know if it was from anxiety or anger bubbling up inside me. Was he lying about this girl roommate? You bet he was. I knocked on his door and hid from the view of the peephole. He answered with his girl roommate behind him. I stepped out and looked at him with a blank face and said, "Wow." Then, I turned and walked away. As I got back to my car, I realized I had locked myself out. It was freezing, and I had left both my keys and my phone in the car. I felt so stupid. I was angry and sad, standing in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. I wish I was making this up, but it's true. With nothing else to lose, I walked back to Dennis's apartment and knocked on their door. Jessica answered, and I begged to use their phone to call Odoye. Surprisingly, she agreed and let me use her phone. Dennis was pacing around angrily after I called 8AA. He even went outside with a coat hanger to try and unlock my car, but it didn't work. While he was outside, I took advantage of being alone with Jessica to get some information out of her. I asked how long they had been together and where they had met. I felt like an auctioneer, firing off questions at Jessica before Dennis came back in. By the end, I had enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he said he was. Everything started to make sense. One big moment was when she mentioned their relationship on Facebook. It turned out this sly idiot had created 2 different Facebook accounts to date both of us, blocking each girl on the other's account. I remembered how his Facebook profile seemed very limited at the beginning, and he said it was because he only used it for work friends. Near the end of our conversation, I tried to convince Jessica that Dennis was a liar and didn't care about her. But then I realized Jessica might know everything and be in on it, or she was just as naive as I had been. I texted her after I left, trying to talk some sense into her, but it was useless. Dennis was with her, and he was a master at twisting stories. However, I had one more trick up my sleeve. Over the next week, I spent every free moment gathering evidence against Dennis. I researched both of them on Google and Facebook. This is the scary part about Facebook if you don't have your privacy settings locked. I found out who Jessica's parents were and decided to send them a message with all the evidence I had collected. I wanted them to believe my story and see Dennis for who he really was. I gathered photos of Dennis and me, screenshots of our conversations, all with timestamps to show he was seeing me while he was with Jessica. I hoped they wouldn't think I was just some crazy ex-girlfriend. Here is the message I sent. Hello, Jessica's mom's name. My name is X, and I thought there was something you should know. Your daughter is being lied to by her current boyfriend, Dennis. I met him on an online dating site, OkCupid, and we spent the last 5 months together. Dennis ended up lying to me about everything, and I doubt your daughter knows the extent to which she has been lied to. I feel it is only right to share this information with you so that your daughter can be aware, and Dennis can no longer get away with this behavior. Dennis is not who he says he is. He has lied about many aspects of his life. I have pictures and evidence to back up everything I am about to tell you. First, a breakdown of what I learned about Dennis while dating him for 5 months. As I stated before, I met Dennis on OkCupid in early November. His online name was X, and he used the same name on Flickr. We dated for 5 months until I found out he lied about his living situation and the fact that he had another girlfriend, your daughter. I have several pictures showing Dennis and me together as a couple. He also has multiple Facebook accounts. One he calls a work Facebook, where he was in a relationship with me, and another account where he is in a relationship with your daughter. I sent the message and hoped they would believe me and take action. His work Facebook account no longer exists because he deleted it, but I took pictures of it before he did. I need to mention that I met your daughter twice. The first time was brief. Dennis told me she was just a good friend. They had just come back from a birthday party at Dave and Buster's. This was in early January. The second time was in early March. I went to Dennis's apartment to see if he was lying about still living there. He was. I knocked on their door, and Dennis answered. Your daughter was standing behind him. She told me they had been dating for almost 4 years. I also found out about another Jessica. Her name is Jessica W., and Dennis dated her not long before he started dating me. This Jessica told me Dennis might be seeing other women too. I will attach separate files with all the photos I collected. They are in the order I mentioned them in this letter. I hope this helps you see that Dennis is not who he says he is. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, X. I got a reply from her mother the next morning. But this post is already long enough, and I will share the responses if anyone is interested. The last time I heard from Dennis, he left a message in my backyard. It was a dead rabbit with its head cut off. There was no blood, and the head was cleanly cut. It was clear a human did this. My family and I reported it to the police in case things got worse. Luckily it didn't, but it was clear Dennis was very angry. He didn't want to leave any trace linking him to it. My goal is to share my story so that anyone reading it knows their feelings are valid. Trust your gut. Be careful who you get close to. The stories you hear about people living double lives are real. And to Dennis, I feel sorry that Jessica had to deal with you for so long. You're only sad you got caught. I hope karma catches up with you. To all the women he hurt, I hope you're okay. He's a lowlife, and that's all he will ever be. Back in December of 2004, I was living in Portland, Oregon, attending college. It's been almost 10 years since then. One night, I was at home, writing my last research paper for the term. I had my Yahoo Instant Messenger open and was chatting with a few friends when a message from someone not on my list popped up. It read, "Have you ever thought about suicide?" Okay, weird, I thought. But it was almost midnight on a Sunday, and stranger things had happened to me before. So I messaged the stranger back, just for fun. Sure, who hasn't at some point? Why? That question opened Pandora's box. He started asking me how I wanted to die, why I wanted to die, if I wanted to die with others, and so on. The conversation got creepier and creepier, but I played along, thinking the guy was just messing with me. I asked him his name, and he said it was Jerry. I asked to see a picture, and he sent me a profile pic on Hot or Not, asking if I thought he was good looking. I told him, sure, yeah, you're cute, whatever. He then asked to see a picture of me, so I sent him a random old photo of a girl from MySpace friends. Yes, it's that old, I realize now. He told me I looked 10. Awesome. Thanks, Jerry, who was obsessed with suicide. As the conversation went on, he told me he was sick of life and that women never seemed to be attracted to him, so he wanted to end it all. I told him the usual things you're supposed to say to someone in that situation. Relationships are nothing. You're more important to the people in your life. Don't do it. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not heartless, but I just didn't feel like talking someone off a ledge at that moment. It was 1 a.m. Jerry then told me he'd met a lot of women online who wanted to kill themselves, and that he was planning a party for Valentine's Day, which was a month and a half away. He said everyone could come and do it together at his house in Klamath Falls, Oregon. He asked if I was interested in joining. I said yes, sure, but made an excuse that I didn't have a car to get down there. He told me there were a few women from Portland coming down for it, and one of them had a van, so he was sure I could catch a ride. He said he had built a beam in his home that could hold up to 50 bodies at once, but that I shouldn't wear shoes because they'd weigh me down. Now, I was starting to realize that this guy was actually very serious, and this was not a joke. So I began asking him for specifics, like his address, full name, and who the women from Portland were. He told me their names and mentioned that one of them was bringing her 5 children with her, and that they wanted to die as well. Huge red flags went up at this point. While still chatting with him, I called a friend of mine in Eastern Oregon who works as a 911 dispatcher. She was at work when I called, and after hearing the whole story, she advised me to hang up and call the Portland Police Department right away. She made a record of my call in their system, just in case. I kept talking to Jerry while I called the Portland police. They sent 2 officers about an hour later. When I explained what was going on, they pretty much laughed at me. I printed out our chat log and gave them Jerry's full name and address, which I had verified through Google as legit. They told me to just stop talking to him, simple as that, and left. I felt really stupid. I called my friend back home and told her what Portland PD did. She said to just keep an eye on things and save the conversation if he kept talking. So I did just that. 2 more hours passed, and things got to the point where I couldn't handle him anymore. He kept asking me how I wanted to die. Would I wear clothes or be naked? Did I want to have sex before I died? Would I have a problem killing kids beforehand? Would I want to hold hands with others while we hanged? Finally, I told him I'd be in touch closer to Valentine's Day. For the most part, I laughed it off with some friends because Portland PD never got back to me. I assumed it was just a strange prank. However, fast forward to February 10th, 2005, when a friend called me while I was on campus. He told me about a guy in Klamath Falls who had been arrested for trying to set up a mass suicide pact for Valentine's Day. I was floored. I ran to my office, logged into a computer, and saw the news everywhere. Gerald Crean was arrested for plotting a suicide Valentine's Day party. My friend from back home saw the news and called me, telling me to call back the Portland PD and tell them I had reported this in December. So I made the call, and about an hour later, 2 FBI agents came to pick me up at my job. They took me home and took my entire computer to be analyzed. We sat in my living room as they questioned me over and over about my involvement, and if I was really planning to commit suicide. I kept telling them that I had talked to the guy as a joke, thinking it was some sort of prank. I only called the cops when he started talking about a woman from Portland bringing her kids too. I explained how I had given all the info to the Portland PD officers back in December, and how I had no idea they hadn't done anything about it. The agent told me the story had gotten much bigger. Crean had contacted hundreds of people, and at least 30 had agreed to come to his house on Valentine's Day to commit suicide together. One woman's parents had found emails between their daughter and Crean and called the police, which finally got them involved. This happened less than a week before Valentine's Day. I was freaked out as they dropped me back off at the college. I told my boss everything that had happened. She told me that reporters had been calling non-stop since I left, wanting to talk to me. She said she didn't give them my cell phone number but thought it was only a matter of time before they showed up at the office. I was a student worker, and my name was on the campus website and directory. If the news agencies got a hold of a police report, there was no telling how fast they could track me down. I called my mom to tell her what had happened, and she said she'd come to get me and bring me home for a break. I took 4 days off, turned in what assignments I had left, and since the FBI had my computer, I headed off to Eastern Oregon to wait out the media. Big mistake. Huge. By the time I got home that night, they had already tracked down my brother and sister-in-law, who thought it was so cool that ABC and CNN wanted to talk to me. They gave them my parents' address and my cell phone number. They're idiots. I was harassed, chased down, and semi-terrorized until I finally gave an interview to Good Morning America, hoping it would die down. I thought the story was out, who cares? But I was wrong. Apparently, every news outlet cared until they got their 15 seconds of conversation that others didn't get. I had my 15 seconds of fame, and I never want to deal with that again. Crean is still sitting in the Salem State Hospital for his crimes of solicitation to commit murder. Mister, have you ever thought of suicide? Let's not meet in real life. I was working on a Saturday in Tokyo as a private tutor for people whose first language is not English. One of my regular students is a businessman in his late 40s. Usually I don't like Japanese businessmen, but he's always very kind and seems genuinely respectable. One Saturday we were in the middle of a lesson when he suddenly started asking questions about my coworker. I answered what I could about him, but I was a little confused since I didn't think this student had ever met my coworker. When I asked why he was interested, he replied, "Because he keeps walking by and talking to someone, but I don't think it's a student because there aren't any other students here right now. Is he all right?" It's a little hard to focus when he's talking. But that Saturday was Valentine's Day, and my coworker had not come in that day. Besides my students, I was alone in the building all day. I didn't see or hear anything myself, so it kind of creeped me out. I have been divorced for several years now, but not by choice. My ex-wife Julia ended our marriage suddenly, accusing me of cheating. The problem is, I never cheated on her. I was deeply in love with her, and my feelings never changed. I spent plenty of time at home and never gave her any reason to doubt me. But Julia was hiding her true nature. It took a messy divorce for me to see who she really was. The divorce judge believed her lies without question, and she took almost everything from me. I thought about fighting for custody of our 2 children, but I gave up when she threatened to accuse me of child abuse. I knew I had no chance. The family court judge would have believed her too. Now, I live in a small apartment, working 2 jobs to pay for alimony and child support. I get to see my son and daughter only every 3rd or 4th Saturday. I'm lucky it's that often. She has interfered with my visits many times, and I can't fight back because of her threats. A few months ago, she started letting the kids come over every other weekend. That's when I noticed something was wrong. My son had a bruise and a cut on his arm. He said he got into a fight at school. The next time, my daughter had a bruise and gave the same excuse. I started to worry. Both kids getting into fights at school within weeks of each other seemed strange. Over the next few months, I saw more problems. Their clothes were worn and dirty, and they had lost weight. This didn't make sense. Julia was getting plenty of money from me for child support. There was no reason for the kids to look like this. I asked them what was going on, but they wouldn't say much. This raised some serious red flags. I couldn't afford a private investigator, but a friend who had more money agreed to help me. He asked why I needed a security camera in my apartment. I told him that I had a feeling I might need one soon. Over the next few weeks, the private detective met with me and my friend at my apartment. The information he provided was upsetting. The detective had many photos of my ex-wife meeting with shady people in hidden places, buying drugs. In other photos, she was seen walking out of malls with new shoes and very expensive clothes. She had been using my child support money for everything except our children. The last two photos showed my ex with raised fists, while my children were in a defensive position, crying. So much for their stories about school fights. The detective told me one more thing. My ex might have spotted him or noticed him earlier and got suspicious. He couldn't be sure. Whatever the case, I now had the evidence I needed to expose her. Later that night, I was woken up by the doorbell ringing over and over. I stumbled to the front door and opened it. There was my ex-wife, looking furious. If looks could kill, I would have died on the spot. But I stayed calm. "What do you want at this hour?" I asked. "You hired someone to follow me, didn't you? To take pictures of me?" "Oh, so you saw him, huh?" I said, feeling a bit of satisfaction at her realization. "Why did you do that?" she shouted. "I had my reasons. Whatever the case, I've got the evidence. You're going to prison, and you won't see the kids again if I have any say in it." She stood there silently for a few seconds, her rage clear. "If I can't have them, neither will you." Suddenly, she pulled out a knife. I reacted too late, and she stabbed me in the shoulder. I stumbled back into my apartment as she tried to stab me again. I managed to shake her off, but she slashed my arm, leaving a deep cut. I grabbed a lamp from the living room and threw it at her. It hit her head and she fell unconscious. The police arrived soon after, and I told them everything. My ex woke up and tried to play the victim, saying I was rough with her and she stabbed me in self-defense. I told the cops I had a security camera that would prove my side of the story. I knew I had made the right call having it installed. My ex got a long prison sentence for her drug use, child neglect, and trying to kill me. She would be old and gray by the time she got out. I couldn't take my children right away because of my financial situation, but the court agreed to grant me full custody once I was back on my feet. For now, my kids are staying with my parents, but when the time comes, I look forward to rebuilding my relationship with them. I've never told anyone this story because it's hard to admit I was almost kidnapped when I was 11 years old. It was 2005, a regular summer day for me. I got up around noon, went for a bike ride with my brother, then spent most of the day in our above-ground pool. I was looking forward to playing video games all night. Before heading downstairs to play PlayStation, I decided to check my MySpace profile quickly. As I was about to log off, I got a friend request from Allie 13, who was 3 hours away in a small town in Kentucky. I didn't know anyone named Allie, not even an Allison or any girl whose name began with A. She was pretty, which made 11-year-old me curious. Why would she want to be friends with me? I almost ignored it, but ended up accepting the request. With nothing else to do, I sent her a message asking, "Do I know you from somewhere?" She replied that we hadn't met, but she was friends with one of my friends, Mike. I checked her profile and saw she and Mike had common interests and were friends. Everything seemed to check out. I didn't ask Mike about her, but I was a trusting kid and had no reason to doubt her. For the next few weeks, we chatted every night for at least 3 hours. We talked about school, music, TV, typical kid stuff. I thought we were just MySpace friends until she said she liked me. I laughed it off, thinking she meant as friends. But she clarified she had feelings for me and wanted to meet in person. She lived far from me, so I didn't see how this could happen. I knew my parents wouldn't take me to meet a girl I met online, and I didn't want to ask them anyway. They were good parents, but I didn't feel comfortable talking to them about these things. So, I shrugged it off. I told her it would be hard for us to meet because, as much as I liked riding my bike, a 3-hour bike ride to a part of the state I didn't know was not something I was comfortable doing. She understood and said she wanted to talk on the phone instead of just messaging. I agreed but told her to never call my number and to let me call her because I didn't want my parents picking up and asking questions. She agreed, so I called her. The first time, a man answered. He sounded gruff and asked who I was. It was weird because I had just told her I was calling, and she said she had the phone with her. But I didn't think much of it. I told him my name was James and that I was looking for Allie. He told me to hold on, and I heard some rustling on the phone like someone was handing it over. Then I heard a high-pitched, "Hello?" We talked for a few minutes. Then she said she had to go because her dad was expecting a call. I shrugged it off and told her to just message me so we could talk later. We kept messaging back and forth for a while, and before I knew it, summer was almost over. She was unhappy that we hadn't met in person yet, so she had an idea. She said there was an end-of-summer event at a lake near my house. She said her family used to go there sometimes and that she could probably talk them into going for the event. My family usually went to the area on the 4th of July, and we had just had a good time there, so it wasn't hard to convince my folks to go again. A few nights later, she told me her family had agreed, and she was super excited to finally meet me. She said she was going to kiss me as soon as she saw me, which made me blush. I tried to play it cool, like I had kissed plenty of girls before, but I hadn't. I was really excited to finally kiss a girl, and it was only a few days away. I had a hard time sleeping the next couple of nights, and stayed up late talking to Allie. We were both excited and couldn't wait to meet. It felt magical. The night before, I think I stayed up until 8 a.m. talking to her. Finally, the day came. After an early afternoon bike ride and a short swim, my family loaded into the car. My dad took the truck so my brother and I could bring our bikes to the lake. There were plenty of bike trails, and we always enjoyed riding there, but I told my brother I wouldn't be hanging out with him the whole night. I said I would ride with him a bit before meeting another friend. He wanted to tag along like little brothers do, but I quickly convinced him not to. I told him the kids I was meeting were mean, and I was only going because of one friend. Thankfully, he didn't ask any more questions. About an hour later, as the sun was starting to set, my brother said he was going back to our parents because he didn't like riding in the dark. He had a habit of crashing, so when I went off on my own, it was without any trouble. I made my way to the picnic area where Allie and I had agreed to meet. I sat on one of the tables with my bike resting against the side. I waited for a long time, long enough to start getting worried. The fireworks were about to start, and Allie hadn't shown up yet. I stood up and jumped down from the picnic table just as a rusty old white pickup truck pulled up beside the tables. The man inside rolled down the window and gave me a weird smile, saying he was Allie's dad and he was going to take me to her. I felt strange about the situation and just gave him a blank stare, saying, "What?" He turned off the engine, thinking maybe I couldn't hear him over the sound, and climbed out of the truck. I said, "I'm here to take you to Allie. Hop in," he said, opening the passenger door and motioning for me to get in. The truck was full of garbage and looked very dirty. I could smell oil and other things coming from it. I gave a crooked look and told him I wasn't going to get in. As he grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the truck, I quickly realized what he was all about. "Get in the damn truck," he barked, squeezing my arm so tightly that I thought it would break. I pulled away, practically giving myself an Indian burn, and told him I was leaving. When he came after me, I did the only thing I could think of to repel a grown man twice my size and probably thrice my age. I reared back and kicked him square in the genitals. I didn't wait to see how he handled the blow. I hopped on my bike and pedaled with all my might back to the other side of the lake where my family was. He didn't follow me, or at least I don't think he did. If he had, he might have seen my dad, who was a rather large guy and definitely not someone you'd want to fight after he'd had a few beers. I never saw him again, and when I got home and tried to message Allie to tell her what a jerk her dad was, her profile was gone. I saw Mike just before school started, and he said he had no idea who Allie was and didn't even remember adding her on MySpace. It wasn't until years later that I realized how close I'd come to being abducted, and who knows what else. Allie's dad, let's not meet again. When I was in high school, I lived in a very small town in Texas. It was the kind of place where everyone was either related to each other or didn't like each other. I had no family there, but I had a pretty blonde girlfriend, which made me unpopular with some people. I faced petty harassment and occasional fights, but things had been getting worse. That's why on Valentine's Day, my girlfriend and I decided to skip the school dance and stay in to watch a movie at her house while her parents went out. We thought it would be better to avoid any trouble. We borrowed her dad's car, a little Honda hatchback, and went into town to rent a movie and get some ice cream at Dairy Queen. She lived far out in the woods along a lonely road with no streetlights. As we were driving back, chatting and eating our blizzards, a car came up behind us. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but when the headlights flooded the inside of our car, I saw two hands on the back seat and a head coming from the hatchback part of the car. As soon as the lights hit, the head and hands retreated. A chill ran through my entire body. I slowly reached down and pulled out my pocket knife, the only thing I had. My girlfriend noticed and asked what was wrong. "Nothing," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just have to stop at my friend's house real quick," I said. She knew I was lying. I didn't have any friends. I pulled over at the next house we saw and jumped out of the car, yelling at her to get out too. She jumped out, totally confused, as I flipped the driver's seat forward and lunged into the back seat like a maniac. A guy popped up like a jack-in-the-box, waving his empty hands. Hey, what are you all up to tonight?" It was a weird kid from our high school who we had never spoken to before. "What in the hell are you doing in our car?" I asked. "I thought you guys were going to the dance and I was just hitching a ride," he replied. We stared at him with our mouths wide open, not knowing what to say or do. He tried to act cool, but we were in the middle of nowhere in some random person's driveway. Whatever he had planned was forgotten. We ended up driving him to the dance and dropping him off. He kept telling us to come inside. "Yeah, no thanks." As soon as he got out of the car, we drove away quickly. My girlfriend started crying and shaking. She was so freaked out. I had no idea what he was trying to do when the lights caught him crawling out of the hatchback. I hated that high school. A few years ago, I was on a dating site and matched with a police officer. I thought his dog was cute and saw this as my chance to pet a police dog. But soon after, I lost interest. He kept complaining about his recent divorce. I don't remember all the details, but it was clear he was the problem in that relationship. I was also grossed out by how he fetishized me for my big breasts, tattoos, and colorful hair. I told him straight up that I wasn't interested, and that he was giving me red flags. He begged for a second chance, but I said no and blocked his number. A few days later, around midnight, there was a knock on my door. My heart sank. I looked through the peephole and saw a stranger holding food. He said he was an Uber Eats driver. I told him through the door that I didn't order any food, but he said someone else did and that he knew my name. I asked who ordered it, and he gave a name I didn't recognize. I told him I didn't want the food and directed him to the dumpster to throw it out, unsure if he was really from Uber. Later, I went through my dating app matches and realized the name he mentioned was the cop's name. I checked my blocked messages and saw that the cop had texted me a lot. The last text said, "I hope you like your dinner." I decided to unblock him so I could keep an eye on what he was doing. I wanted to know if I needed to worry about my safety or if I needed to buy some bear mace. A few weeks later, while I was at work as a hairstylist, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking it was a new client. A voice on the other end said, "Hey Rachel, I'm at the Starbucks across the street. What's your drink order?" I asked, "Who is this? I don't have you in my appointment book," assuming it was a regular client and I had made a scheduling error. When he said his name, my heart dropped. How does he know where I work? I asked him how he found out where I live and work. He explained that he did a reverse image search on my dating app photos, found my social media, and my Yelp page for the salon. From there, he got my address. I told him I was calling his station to report him for stalking, and if he came near me again, I would consider it a threat and defend myself. He kept begging me to give him a chance. I hung up and called the police station where he worked. This is a very small town, so I thought it would help. The person on the phone didn't even let me email screenshots of the creepy texts. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He's going through a lot right now, bae." They treated him like the victim. He mostly left me alone after that, but I was scared of living alone for the first time in my life. I have a semi-popular meme page on Instagram with about 8,000 followers. I sifted through my followers and found 5 of his accounts, blocked them all, and moved on. This was several years ago, but all the memories came flooding back when I noticed a familiar profile photo on an account that commented on a post. I must have missed one of his accounts when blocking. I had posted a photo of me holding 2 big tunas I caught on a fishing trip. He commented, "God, I wish I was one of those fish. I'd love to know what it was like to be held by you. Off." I answered, thinking it was a new client. A voice on the other end said, "Hey Rachel, I'm at the Starbucks across the street. What's your drink order?" I asked, "Who is this? I don't have you in my appointment book," assuming it was a regular client and I had made a scheduling error. When he said his name, my heart dropped. How does he know where I work? I asked him how he found out where I live and work. He explained that he did a reverse image search on my dating app photos, found my social media, and my Yelp page for the salon. From there, he got my address. I told him I was calling his station to report him for stalking, and if he came near me again, I would consider it a threat and defend myself. He kept begging me to give him a chance. I hung up and called the police station where he worked. This is a very small town, so I thought it would help. The person on the phone didn't even let me email screenshots of the creepy texts. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He's going through a lot right now, bae." They treated him like the victim. He mostly left me alone after that, but I was scared of living alone for the first time in my life. I have a semi-popular meme page on Instagram with about 8,000 followers. I sifted through my followers and found 5 of his accounts, blocked them all, and moved on. This was several years ago, but all the memories came flooding back when I noticed a familiar profile photo on an account that commented on a post. I must have missed one of his accounts when blocking. I had posted a photo of me holding 2 big tunas I caught on a fishing trip. He commented, "God, I wish I was one of those fish. I'd love to know what it was like to be held by you. Off." This was 3 years ago, and I had just started college in a different part of the country. I was 18 and using Tinder, but I never actually met anyone from it. I would just swipe through guys to be nosy and see who was on it. One day, I swiped right on a few guys, and about half an hour later, got a message from a guy who was about 20 kilometers away. He made some small talk, but it was awkward, so I stopped replying. A day later, I received a friend request from him on Facebook. Mind you, I have a common enough name, so it would have taken ages for him to find me. We had no mutual friends, and my Tinder photos were not on my Facebook page. The only clue might have been the university I was attending, but even then, it seemed strange. Then, I quickly got a follower request on Instagram, and he somehow found my Snapchat username too. I was freaking out at this point. I messaged him asking how he found my full name, and he just replied, "I think we have a connection. I really want to get to know you better." I unmatched him, deleted my Tinder, and blocked him on all social media. After that, things were quiet for a few months. I was staying in student housing and focusing on my studies, as I had a lot of assignments from the start. This was toward the end of November. I had no assignments due for 2 weeks, so I decided to go out with some friends. One of my friends stayed in student accommodation, and the other was commuting, so she was staying with the friend in student housing. I decided to walk back to my digs, as my landlady would probably freak out if I wasn't home that morning. I really wish I had gotten a taxi instead. I walked back and was about 15 minutes from the local nightclub we were at. It was 3 a.m., and I was at the front door of the house, trying to unlock it. The door was tricky because it had 2 different locks, and I had to pull the handle towards myself to open it. It's also tough when you're tipsy and trying not to wake up the family you're staying with. As I finally unlocked the door, a dark car pulled into the housing estate where I was staying. The estate was quite big, with a large green area in the middle for children or people playing with their dogs. The car came towards me, so I quickly got inside and locked the door. The car pulled into the driveway of the house I was staying in and just sat there with the full headlights on. I was shaking and too afraid to move. I crouched below the door, which had frosted glass halfway up. When I finally got the courage to go upstairs and look out my bedroom window to see who it was, the car pulled out of the driveway and sped off. A few days later, I got a new friend request from the creepy Tinder guy on a new Facebook profile. There were no pictures on the account, just the same name. I blocked it again. That was enough for me. It even caused me to transfer universities the next year. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if it was just bad timing or if it was that creep from Tinder sitting in the driveway, but it was petrifying. If you take anything from this, be careful who you let on your social media or dating apps and what information you share. This happened from 2010 to 2015, but the scary part happened in 2015, 3 years after I finished college. I still remember it clearly. But before I tell the story, let me share a bit about my dad and his family when they first came to the US. My family now lives in Ohio, Cleveland. But before that, my dad's family came from Poland. They moved to the US in 1970. My grandpa left during the last days of World War II. He wasn't a soldier, just a regular person. He left because there were many bombings. Their house was destroyed in 1944, but they survived. When he left, he was already married and had one child, my oldest uncle. They lived in Italy for 20 years. My grandpa did many jobs to earn money, and my dad and his siblings were born there. When they finally came to the US, my dad was 5 years old, the fourth of 5 children. They arrived in New York with no money and had to live on the streets for a while. My grandpa and his oldest son worked different jobs until they could rent a small apartment. My grandma found work as a cleaner in parks, and my dad and his siblings would help her. Once they settled, my dad and his siblings went to school and worked. They all finished high school, and most went to college and found stable jobs. My dad wanted to become a teacher and move to another state, but his younger brother didn't finish college because he got into bad habits. He spent his money on drinking, smoking, and drugs. He often fought with his siblings and my dad because he stole their money for his habits. They felt bad for him and made him go to rehab. He stayed there until 1985. When he came out, he promised he had changed. He found a job and met a woman who loved him. It took years for my dad's family to have a good life. My grandparents moved to Buffalo, and my younger uncle lived nearby to help them as they got older. My dad moved to Ohio in 1990, with his older siblings moving earlier. He found a job as a school teacher in Cleveland. Soon after, he met and married my mom. So when I was born, Polish was my first language. My mom was a nurse and my dad a high school teacher. I had no siblings, so I was often lonely. It took me years to learn English well, and it was very hard. In elementary school, I was alone and teased because I stuttered when I spoke English. I felt like an outsider, but my parents always supported me. I learned to ignore the bullies and just wanted to live peacefully. By the time I was in 4th grade, I finally made some friends. My parents told my teacher about my trouble with English, and my mom's friend, who spoke Polish, volunteered to help me. He was my translator until I could speak English well. This helped me a lot, and I started to feel less stressed. My new friend helped me in school, and I could talk to other kids. In high school, my English got much better, and I made more friends. But I still stuttered sometimes, which made some students laugh. Even so, I was a good student and did well in school. Now, to the main story. In 2010, when I was 20, I moved to Columbus for college. I was there for 5 years, and I won't name the college for privacy reasons. But during my first month, life was really good. I lived in a dorm with other male students, and classes were busy, so I didn't have much time to check in with my parents or relax. I felt stressed at first, but soon I got used to it and could handle my busy schedule. I met some strange and weird people. Some were funny, but some seemed dangerous. But everyone is different. I made a lot of friends during my first year. One of them was Jake, who became my best friend. I also joined school clubs and activities, which helped me meet more people. When I visited home, I usually spent time studying and working on assignments, even on weekends. In 2012, when I was a sophomore, I met a girl named Sarah, who had just transferred to the university. I met her when Jake and I went to the girls' dorm to see his girlfriend, Emily. Sarah was Emily's roommate. During our visit, Sarah asked me many questions, like if I had a girlfriend. She said she liked boys like me, so I knew she was interested. But my main focus was my studies. I made it seem like I thought she was joking and answered her questions simply. I hadn't had a girlfriend before, and I planned to get one only after I graduated. But I heard I was a main topic of discussion among Sarah and her friends. As time went by, Sarah started texting me. She got my number from Jake. At first, it was hard to find time to talk to her because I was busy with my studies. But I realized I should give it a chance, as Jake told me she really liked me. My next move changed my life. I began to text her back, and we started talking on the phone. Soon after, we began meeting in person, and eventually, we started dating. She became my girlfriend after several dates. During our relationship, we learned more about each other. We met every day, and her calls and texts became more frequent. She introduced me to her friends, who seemed to like me, and I got to know more about her. But then she started becoming overprotective and got easily annoyed if I didn't meet her on time. At first, it was nothing, but as time passed, I decided to focus more on my studies. She was upset, but the more I explained, the more she understood. Our relationship continued without problems until our final year of college. She changed a lot. She became very paranoid, jealous, and would start arguments in public, making a scene. It was very embarrassing. I decided to distance myself from her and focus on my studies. One night while I was studying, I heard a knock on my door. My roommate was asleep, so I thought it was Jake. I opened the door. It was Sarah, looking angry. She asked why I was avoiding her, so I explained everything. She left angrily without saying a word. But I could tell she didn't listen to anything I said. One day, as I was heading to my room after class, I saw Sarah vandalizing the place. She had written in big red letters on the wall, "You will pay for this." It almost looked like blood. I immediately got her out, and she started to make a scene, but thankfully, the school authorities intervened. I explained everything to them, and they suspended Sarah for a week. My roommate and I were moved to another room since ours needed to be cleaned. However, the cleaners found broken glass under my bed, so now I knew she had other bad intentions. After that, Sarah started messaging me, ranging from apologies and asking for forgiveness to nasty curses. She even began threatening me, which was really scary. I decided I had enough and blocked her number. But it didn't end there, and this incident changed my view of Sarah. I'm glad I saw her true colors. After her suspension ended, I broke up with her. She didn't say anything, but she looked pale and didn't come to school for several days after that. I apologized for breaking up with her and felt sorry for her because she seemed very sad. As time went on, I saw her on campus again. She continued to go to classes but was always alone. I thought maybe the breakup had affected her friendships too. Then, she started pouring out her anger on social media. One day, while checking my page, I saw a post from Sarah with my pictures, with nasty words meant to insult and defame me. I reported the post and blocked her on Facebook. I was tired of her childish and mean behavior. After our breakup, I decided to talk to Jake and my friends and make up with them. Our friendship had suffered when I started dating Sarah, so I apologized. They accepted it and welcomed me back to the group. One day, I asked Emily about Sarah, and she said Sarah hadn't moved on and was making life hard for her. Emily had to ask to change roommates. Sarah's obsession with me was worrying. She had become very sad and angry after the breakup. She would cry for hours and swear a lot in their room. Sarah also started showing her dark side to her friends. She got into fights with other students, made threats, and talked about creepy things, scaring her friends. Scratch marks appeared on her arms, and her friends worried she might hurt herself. Whenever they tried to help, she would get violent and throw things around the room. She was harassing Emily and her friends, which made them stay away from her. All of this shocked me, and I hoped she would stop and get better. But I was wrong. She only got worse. I didn't hear much about Sarah for a while. She didn't apologize to her friends and didn't seem to care about having friends anymore. Months passed, and I finally graduated. I was able to forget the bad memories and move on. After graduation, I went back to Cleveland to start my new life. Most of my friends in Columbus started their new lives by partying, and some went on vacation. Others who lived outside the city returned to their hometowns to celebrate with their families before starting job searches. Emily moved in with Jake, and they lived in the suburbs of Columbus. I stayed in contact with my friends, but I didn't hear any news about Sarah. I thought she would have changed and moved on by now. After summer, I started my job search like everyone else, and I was lucky to find a stable job in my hometown. The salary was good, my coworkers were friendly, my boss was nice, and I got promoted quickly because of my skills. I also decided to move out of my parents' house and bought a new house. I was looking forward to living a peaceful life. However, one evening after a long day at work, I was driving home when I received a call from an unknown number. I picked up, said hello, but only heard breathing on the other end. I hung up, thinking it was a prank call. But once I got home, the same number called again, and I heard the same breathing. I blocked the number and went to sleep. The next morning, I found something in my mailbox. It was a letter saying, "I don't forgive you, and I don't forget," written in red ink. It reminded me of what Sarah had written on the walls before, so I threw it away, thinking it was just a prank. Then, one afternoon after work, I found another letter on top of my mailbox. It said, "You can't run, you can't hide, and you can't escape," again in red ink. I asked my neighbor about it, and he said he saw a car stop outside my house. A girl got out and placed the letter on my mailbox. My heart dropped. That night, my mind was racing with questions. I knew it was Sarah, but how did she know where I lived? Later, I got a call from another unknown number. When I answered, I heard a familiar voice. "Go outside. I have a gift for you." It was Sarah. I took a deep breath and went outside, shouting and asking where she was. But there was only silence. No cars or people were around. Suddenly, I heard glass shatter behind me. My front window was broken. I was furious and knew it was Sarah. I wanted to confront her, but there was no one around. As I walked back into the house, a rock hit my head, nearly knocking me out. More rocks followed, coming from the woods near my house. I was hurt, so I ran inside and slammed the door shut. There were pieces of broken glass on the floor and a brick with a note saying, "You made the wrong choice." I called the police and told them everything. Before they arrived, I peeked outside to see if it was really Sarah. As I opened the door, another brick landed on my porch. I shut the door and waited for the police. When the police arrived, they yelled at someone and chased them into the woods. They told me they saw someone in black clothes hiding behind a tree. When they shouted, the person ran away. I told them I thought it was Sarah, but they couldn't arrest her without evidence. I gave them the brick with the note for evidence, and they told me to call if anything else happened. The next few days were quiet until one Friday night. I heard a hard thud at my front door. It sounded like a rock. I opened the door and found another brick with a note saying, "I can see you." Across the street was a white SUV with tinted windows. I couldn't see inside. Was it Sarah or someone else? I went back inside and tried to sleep. Later, I woke up around 2:15 a.m. and noticed the power was off. My air conditioning was off, and it was hot. I checked if there was a local blackout, but it seemed to be just my house. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the basement to check the breaker. Both the front and back doors were still closed, but the basement door didn't have a lock. Someone could have broken in that way and turned off the power. I switched the breaker back on and the basement lights came on. To my horror, I saw someone hiding behind some boxes. When I saw who it was, my heart dropped. It was Sarah, wearing a white dress. Her face was unrecognizable, covered in bruises. Her skin was pale, like the girl from that horror movie, The Ring. This wasn't the Sarah I knew in college. My heart raced as she smiled and asked, "I want to be with you again, can we?" I yelled, "No, get out of here or I'm calling the cops." She just stood there, then slowly walked toward me, staring into my soul. She pulled something from behind her back. It was a gun, and she tossed a box on the floor in front of me. The box contained pictures of me from college, now scattered on the ground. She admitted to breaking into my rooms and taking pictures of me while I slept. She showed one and said in a mocking voice, "You're such a handsome guy, but you wasted a beautiful diamond like me, so I'm going to make sure your life is a waste too." She tore my picture into pieces and aimed the gun at me. I managed to dodge the shot, which could have woken my neighbors. I dashed upstairs, trying to lock the basement door behind me, but she fired another shot through the door. It nearly hit me as I quickly ran upstairs to my bedroom, locking the door and hiding in my closet. I heard her footsteps going from room to room until they stopped at my door. She tried to open it but couldn't, so she started pounding and yelling frantically for me to open up. There was a brief silence, then she used enough force to break the door down. She searched the room with her gun drawn, luckily missing the closet where I was hiding. She turned her back to me, so I picked up my baseball bat from inside the closet. Taking a deep breath, I quietly opened the closet door. She hadn't noticed, standing there staring at my bed. Before she could turn around, I swung the bat as hard as I could. It knocked her out, and I tied her to a chair so she couldn't escape. I called the police and took her gun. They arrived quickly and entered my house. By then, Sarah had started to wake up and was handcuffed by the police. She still threatened me and tried to attack me on her way out, but the officers restrained her. I pressed charges, and she was declared mentally insane due to her behavior in court. Instead of jail, she was sent to a mental asylum. Sarah had a mental disorder that caused extreme obsession, dangerous if left unchecked. She went through psychiatric therapy during her trial to determine her mental state. My family and friends knew everything that happened, and I recounted it all to Jake and Emily in a bar. They had expected this from Sarah. She had gone missing for 12 days after graduation. Her older brother contacted her friends, including Jake and Emily, but no one knew where she was. One student said she was last seen in a bar drinking, which worried her brother, so he filed a missing persons report but got no news. She finally returned home one morning, crying. She said she had walked kilometers to get home and slept on the streets for days. Her wallet was stolen while she was drunk, and she arrived home with nothing. Her brother saw her strange behavior escalate and urged her to see a psychologist, but she refused, leading to conflict between them. She left one morning without a note. Her brother worked with the police to find her, but they failed. During her trial, Sarah confessed that the gun she brought that night belonged to her brother. She had stolen it from his drawer while he was sleeping. She admitted to the phone calls, letters, and throwing bricks at me. I learned she tracked me down using personal information from when we were dating. I had given her my phone number and told her where my hometown was, trusting her at the time. When I moved into my new house, she found it by asking a neighbor if they knew me. It was easy for her. One small mistake almost cost me my life, but I was lucky to dodge a bullet. Now, I can't trust anyone easily. I will always observe their behavior and personality before I fully trust them.